Once again, we're about 30 minutes out or 30 seconds out from our start time. We're just giving folks just a little after the hour to or the half hour to get logged in. Welcome again, and we'll be starting shortly. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us in our first of a series of four webinars today. Oh, and I might have just broke the cardinal rule. I apologize. Apparently, my phone was not on off, so I broke the first rule of webinars. But I do apologize for that. Welcome again. I'm Steve Mondernach. I'm Executive Director of the Association of Food and Drug Officials, and we're very pleased to have partnered on this series of four webinars with our colleagues at AIB International. We're pleased to welcome today Judy Lazaro, who is the Senior Director of Food Safety and Global Sales for AIB today. Judy joined AIB in 1990 and has held various roles, including food safety inspector and head of the audit services for North America. She is now the senior category director for food safety and global sales. After graduating from the University of Houston, Judy served in the U.S. Army as a commissioned officer and then joined the fast-paced food industry with Frito-Lay. She is passionate about the food industry and food safety and offering solutions to complicated issues. Well, we want to begin and move right over to Judy's presentation. If you do have questions or during the presentation, please go ahead and enter them in the Q&A box, and we will definitely have time to get to those questions as we move through the presentation. So thank you again, and welcome, Judy.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and a special thanks to Amy for coordinating this whole thing and the whole AFTO team. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Think of this, where else do you all want to spend your Friday afternoon but on a webinar, right? Well, I do my best to keep this fast paced. We'll keep it moving. We'll keep it lively, but we also need to keep it interactive. And what I mean by that is, it's going to be a long web session if all you do is just watch the screen. So what I encourage you to do is ask questions. Type your questions into the question box, ask questions, and we'll do our very best at the end to answer as many questions as we can. So we need to talk about food insights for manufacturers based on the data and the information that we have from last year. And what a year it's been, right? I mean, boy, we're not talking about just pandemic and the crisis and COVID and all that's going on. We're going to focus in on what's the data really telling us for what kind of year we've had. But I want to get started with just one little touch point that I want to mention, and it's the mission statement of AIB International. And the reason why I share this is because I think you'll share the same sentiment that I'm going to share on the screen. And again, the reason why I do share this is we're going to show this throughout the whole web session. And it's especially the second bullet point that says our mission is to positively impact the food supply by equipping our clients with knowledge. And you can say promoting food integrity. And the bottom bullet point, what I think we all strive to do is support the delivery of safe, high quality food every day and everywhere. But really, it's that second bullet point that I want to talk about, and that's equipping our clients with knowledge. We talk about food safety and we say, oh, we do training all the time. We always do training. We do food safety training all the time. You know what we don't do a great job of doing, and the industry is showing us more and more that we're not doing a great job of doing it? We don't educate as well as we need to. And that's what I want to talk to you about. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a lot with pictures, but we're going to train, we're going to teach, but more importantly, we're going to educate. So we have to understand the whys of food safety. And really, to understand, to educate, we have to understand the why. Why are we doing what we do in the food industry? Because nobody goes to work in the morning to do a bad job. Nobody walks in and says, I think I'll handle allergens really poorly today so we can have a recall. Nobody does that. So when something negative happens in the food industry, we have to step back and say, why? Why did that occur? Was it because we weren't holding someone accountable? Was it because we didn't train that person? Was it because we didn't have the right equipment? Was it because it's all the whys. So really, to ensure strength to the food safety chain, we have to have good self-inspections with root cause analysis. And that's what we're going to talk about over the next short session. It's not going to be a long web session, but we are going to, again, we're going to do a lot of it with finding the issue, identifying the issue, and doing our best to eliminate the problem. Okay? Let's go back to the basics, because just like I said, we're going to talk a lot about the whys. If you forget everything that I talk about in the next 35, 40 minutes or so, if you forget everything, but you really still want to understand food safety, remember this one word, and it's the word may, M-A-Y. Because if you can understand the word may as it relates to food safety, you have a good grasp of food safety in the industry. So remember, this is the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and it says a food is adulterated if it's been prepared, packed, or held under conditions where it may have become contaminated, or whereby it may have been rendered injurious to health. It's called the May Clause. And how do we define the word may? Because I mean, you say, oh my gosh, Judy, we could talk about may all day long. How do we define it? That's the beauty of the word. The food industry has done it for us. The regulators have done it for us. They've done it with the good manufacturing practices, right? Why do we put on a hairnet? Think about it. Why do you put on a hairnet every day when you go to work in a food plant, right? Because your hair may contaminate the product. If you think about everything that you do, it's because of the May clause or the good manufacturing practices. So if I look at the GMPs, and don't forget, remember it was 117, it's now, sorry, it was 110, it's now 117. So already make sure that you're relevant and you're current. This is not new anymore. But, again, look at the GMPs, because let's say you're a distributor, you're a warehouse person, you're thinking, wait a minute. She said good manufacturing. I'm not a manufacturer. That doesn't apply to me. I'm a warehouse. And let's look closely at 11793, warehousing and distribution. You see, the GMPs truly impact the supply chain. So it's important that you understand the good manufacturing practices, because it really does answer the question of the May clause. Now, AIB International, we come along, we say the GMPs are great. We think they're phenomenal. We love them. We live by them. But we also think we can add industry best practices to them. We also think we can make them a little more prescriptive. And what we do is then we publish a standard. Consolidated standard, it's called. Consolidated because it takes the good manufacturing practices, but then looks globally and takes the best practices from maybe this market and this region and this industry, and we consolidate it into that standard. And again, this is available at no cost to you. It's a free download. You just have to visit the website. It's a free download, or send me an email and I'll make sure I put it right in your mailbox. It's important that you have the consolidated standards. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is I'm going to talk to you about what we've seen using our consolidated standards. What have we seen in this past year? What have we seen for issues? Where's the industry falling short? Where's the industry doing well? I mean, what have been the gaps in the industry? And I want to start again with the basics, because we have to understand the basics to truly understand the why. Okay? If you open up our standard, you're going to see two definitions: product zone and product area. And many of us take it for granted. But let me ask you this question, all right? This is where I can really illustrate the point of why we don't understand always product zone and product area. Product zone is the area that it's a food contact surface and all the unprotected areas above. So think of it this way: it's where the product touches and whatever's above it. All right, product area is around it. The definition: the area close enough to the product zone that if any issues were found would impact the safety of the product zone. So again, the area around the product zone is your product area. Now, why I tell you we as an industry where we still seem to, the definitions tend to be foggy for us. If I told you right now that you had a regulatory inspector, or you had an AIB inspector, or your largest customer was waiting in the lobby right now to come into your facility and do an inspection, not a visit, an inspection, what does everybody start to do? After you panic, I know everybody's going, we panic, right? We get nervous, we worry. All right, first of all, calm down. We're not doing that. But what does everybody start to do? They start to clean, right? And what they do is they pick up the broom and they start sweeping the floor. They sweep the floor. They sweep the floor. And what they're doing is they're paying attention to the product area. They're focused on the product area. Do you know where the risk is? You know where the risk continues to be? In the product zone. So what we want to do is educate folks to work really, really smart and not nearly just so hard. But most people, most of your employees probably don't know what the right step is. And that's where we're not doing such a great job of educating. Let's educate people on identifying that product zone so we can do a better job of answering the may clause. So again, there's a picture on the screen and everybody's eye immediately goes to what's unsightly, what's not appealing. But if we take the time and say, but where's the real risk? Where's the immediate risk? Not that it's okay for that pump to be leaking that juice. That's never okay. Certainly that creates another issue. But where's the product zone? And if you follow that hose, it's laying directly on the floor, uncapped. So now let's say, where's the risk? Is the risk the product area or the product zone? Probably the product zone. But here's the important part. Remember, we want to make sure we're always ready for a regulatory inspection. We want to make sure we're always ready when a customer comes in to do an inspection. So we can't say that it's okay to have that leaking pump. It's not okay, because what it is, it's an indicator of a problem. So even if that hose wasn't laying on the floor, even if it wasn't there and it was uncapped and it was properly stored, now you have an inspector that wants to do what, everybody? Inspect. Because now you're bringing them over to this area to see what's going on, what's wrong. And when they're there, they're going to notice that, hey, there's also some loose bolts on the floor, and that's a dirty floor drain, and there's condensation over here, and there's some peeling paint. You're giving an inspector a reason to inspect. So remember, I'm not saying, don't walk away and say, Judy said we only have to pay attention to the product zone. Didn't say any such thing. What I am saying is make sure your product is not at risk first, then worry about picking up that broom and sweeping that floor. The product area is hugely important, and we're going to talk about that at the end of this session. But right now, let's focus on product zone. So what have some of the issues been that we've seen this past year? A lot of issues with equipment and utensils. And again, this is one of the most dominating issues on the AIB inspections: equipment and utensils. We're not seeing that equipment is in good condition where it's cleanable. We're finding that seams on equipment are not, they're not smooth. They're very, and I'll show some pictures. The equipment is not correct. It's not in good condition where we're seeing rusting and oxidation. And bottom line, it's not free of defects. And let me give you some real examples, okay? Here's a picture of a mixer. This is a mixer that, you can all, whether it's dough that it's mixing or something, but it's a mixer. And you can tell that somebody decided there was damaged, so they decided they were going to weld it. It is not by any means a sanitary weld. It's a very poor weld. And then they tried to weld on it again. And you can see they tried yet again. Now ask yourself this one question. Allergens continues to be a huge issue for the food industry, right? Allergens, allergen. Do you think they can effectively clean this? If they ran an allergen right now today, and then tomorrow they're going to run a non-allergen, but they said we cleaned it, do you have confidence looking at this piece of equipment that they could effectively clean this piece of equipment? And we don't. And we all know when we look at that, we absolutely don't. So we need to pay attention to the product zone. Now, let me ask you another question. Who is more likely going to find this issue? The operator, or maybe the leadership team that'll do a self-inspection maybe once a week, once a month, or maybe the regulator that's going to come in once a year, or maybe the AIB inspection that's going to come in once a year, or maybe your maintenance team that's going to look at this and do a preventive maintenance on it once a month. You can understand that the person that's most responsible for this should be the operator. So how much time have we really spent with that first line, that first touch point, and talked to that employee and said, hey, if you see something wrong, or how about the sanitation person that's cleaning this, that is obviously every time he or she is cleaning it, I bet they're leaving pieces of their cleaning rag behind. So they're probably using a nice cleaning pad when they clean this, and I bet they cannot effectively clean this surface without leaving bits and pieces of the cleaning item behind. So those are the employees that should be coming forward saying, hey, got a problem with the mixer. Don't rely on all those other systems to catch a problem. Rely on your employees. First line of defense. We train our AIB inspectors with a concept we call ICE, simple concept. It's simple root cause analysis. You identify the problem, you control the problem, and then you eliminate the problem. And why this is so easy for an AIB inspector is we don't have to stick around, just like the regulators, they don't have to stick around for the E part. That's the hard part. That's the root cause analysis. See, I can go and I can identify the issue. I can say the mixer is in poor condition, right? You can control it by saying, I'm going to take it out of service until we do some more repairs on it. Or I'm going to fix that roof leak by hanging a tarp up. You're right. You've identified the problem. You've controlled it. But have you eliminated the problem? Have you really eliminated the problem? Probably not. And that's the hardest part of the ICE concept. And it's also the part that the industry is not doing a great job of root cause analysis. How do I know that? Because if you look at the top issues today for the data from last year, whether it's FDA's top issues or AIB's top issues, guess what? They haven't really changed from 5 years ago. So we're not doing as great of a job with root cause analysis as we think we are, or we're not doing as great of a job as we are educating our employees as we think we are. Let me give you another example. So this is a seasoning tumbler, spins around, as you know, put seasoning on. Let's just say inside of this is potato chips or something like that, okay? And some type of snack food. And what we have is we have this device that goes inside of it, like a feeder that feeds inside of it. And you can see how difficult the welding on this is. And again, does it look smooth on the outside? Doesn't look smooth on the outside. So do you think it looks better on the product zone side, the other side of this piece of equipment? Do you think it's probably real smooth on that side? I don't. I would have my suspicions. I'm also concerned that it's touching. Notice the two metal surfaces are touching, and this moves around in a circle, which means I'm going to always have metal to metal. The potential is great. In this case, it's occurring. I can see it occurring. So now, may I be introducing some foreign material into my product stream? If you answer yes to that, remember you have a legal responsibility and a moral responsibility, but that's a different matter, to do something about it. So again, when you see something like this, identify the problem. I have metal to metal wear. Control it. I'm going to pull it away. But are you eliminating it? What is going to prevent it from ever happening again? And that's where you need to take a team of people and sit down and say, okay, what's the issue? Well, we take it out of place and then we have to slide it back into place. Maybe if we put some stoppers on the floor, so it always goes into the same spot on the floor where we permanently, identify it on the floor, it'll never touch that metal surface. Maybe those are the things that you want to start doing. You can also, if you don't like the concept device, identify, control, and eliminate. You can do 5 whys. Ask 5 times why, and bottom line, you'll still be trying to solve the E and ICE. Okay. Now we're in a beverage plant, and you can see this is a gasket that's badly deteriorated. And may that introduce itself into the product stream? Absolutely. So now, again, I can identify it. I have a potential contaminant. I can control it. I can replace the gasket. But again, I really have to spend the time doing the eliminate. And let's not forget utensils. And this is a picture this is from a particular facility that surprisingly had a recall, not very long after this picture was taken, for allergens. And it's interesting because if you look at this utensil, and I want you to look closely at it, it's very poorly welded. You can see that, and everybody can see it, right? It's poorly welded, difficult to clean, virtually impossible to clean. This utensil has already been cleaned. All right, so this particular picture has already been cleaned. This utensil is ready to go. Now look at it closely, especially on the left-hand corner and on the right-hand corner. Do you see the residue in there? Now, what if that was an allergen? Okay, so do you understand why you look at it and you say, it's not just about it being unsightly, it's about it being a food safety issue. Okay, so these are real things that we need to pay attention to. We're seeing it consistently. It's been the top finding for us on our audits last year, equipment and utensils. We're now looking at the side of an ingredient container. And when you scoop ingredients out of a container, the employees will sometimes have the habit of hitting the utensil against the wall of the container just to take any residual product they try to remove it. And what happens over time is you start to bring pieces of plastic, and you can see the edges of this ingredient container and the loose plastic. And again, may that contaminate the food product? If you answer yes, you're violating the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Okay. And then the last picture that I want to share with you about utensils, again, who is more likely going to identify that? Remember, it's the operator. So make sure we're spending a lot of time educating our first line people. Now, I look at this picture as an inspector and I am a kid in a candy store. I know you look at it and you go, what's so great about that? It's just a bunch of pipes laying on the ground. What's so great about that? I look at that and I say, what do I have here? Because this plan is going to say, well, Judy, those are clean parts ready to go. Now I'm really a kid in a candy store. And I say that because I want you to be excited about this. I want you to be passionate about this because food safety is part of our everyday life. And all we have to do is learn from it. So I would go over to this and I would ask the question and say, are these clean or dirty parts? And they'll say, these are all clean, ready to go. Well, you can all see the obvious things. You can see the boots, really boots, and you can see the hose that's got some mold on it. But this is where you want to check the product zone, because if all of these pipes are all connected, it's very hard for me to inspect the product zone. But if they're already laid out like this for me, I can pick up gaskets. I can look at the condition of the gaskets. I can look at the inside to see if there's smooth seams. I can also evaluate the level of cleaning because you're telling me these are all cleaned, ready to go. So let's open some of them up and see if they're truly cleaned and ready to go. So again, stop walking by things like this that you're seeing in your facility. I want you to see something like this and go, whoa, and feel a little excitement when you see it, because I'm telling you, this will truly give you a snapshot of what's going on in your facility with your food safety program. Ceilings and overheads comes to the list, and this is second on the list of the top issues that we're seeing in the industry. People are forgetting to do what? Look up. And we have to make sure the product zone is where the product touches and whatever's above it. And you know, it sounds so simple. You say, well, geez, that's simple. Read the FDA 483s, find out what's going on in the industry. We are not looking up. If we were truly looking up, we wouldn't be having issues with loose and peeling paint, roof leaks, condensation leaks. How about a condition such something like this? Okay. How do you tell if this is in a facility and this is over an ingredient area where the product zone is exposed? How do you tell employees that we're truly committed to food safety if we allow a condition like this in our facility to exist? And we all day long, employees, everybody, the CEO, everybody walks under this all day long. How committed are we to truly food safety? Begs the question, right? So these are the kinds of things that you want your employees, because remember I said at the beginning, it's time for an inspector. What do? And you grab a broom. This is what you should be doing. You should be looking up saying, whoa, what do I have going on up here? We need a work order on this. We need to fix this problem. We need to clean this problem. I mean, there's so many things going wrong in this photo, one photo. And again, great photo to use in your own plants for training. And then let's not forget the dreaded roof leaks. And I often say to people, you know, it's not an if you get a roof leak, it's when you get a roof leak. But there is a right way to manage a roof leak. So, you know, this is actually some condensation that's coming down around a stack of a piece of equipment, a fryer stack. But again, you can see the similarities are the same. You get this moisture buildup, you're going to get damage to your roof tiles. And again, we need to look up. But now let's go back to the concept of ICE: identify, control, and eliminate. I've identified it, right? I got a roof leak. I've controlled it. I put a tarp up, or I clean the area real well, or I move the raw material so it doesn't drip on it. But don't forget the E. And one of the things that I challenge you to do in your own plant, and I want you to do it right now today, is if you have roof leaks in your plant right now, I want you to go and find what the E is. Find out how your plant is planning on eliminating it. And the reason why I challenge you this, because what I see as an inspector is I'll see roof leaks and I'll say, show me the work order for that. And I get everybody kind of looks at each other, because you see, Judy thought that Peg did it, and Peg thought that Steve did it, and Steve thought, well, that's a maintenance issue. So, you know, John was the one that was supposed to do it. Because when we see something as significant as a roof leak, we almost feel like that's out of our control. It's out of our control. That's a building issue. It's out of our control. And we tend to ignore it because we think the canopy or the tarp is doing everything it needs to do. Again, I challenge you, find the E, make sure you're truly eliminating the problem. Now let's talk about product zone cleaning. So our focus already has been on product zone, and product zone. Okay. And that is what our industry, what the trends have been showing us for this past year, we are missing in the product zone. And that also includes cleaning of the product zone. So remember, there is a difference between product zone and product area. We tend to spend a lot of time cleaning the product area because it's cosmetically appealing to us. We want it to look great, which is important. And I echo it needs to be done, but make sure that the product zone is safe first. And then we also see a lot of stored product pests, and you're thinking, wait a minute, shouldn't that be in pest control? Nope. When you see stored product insects, cigarette beetles, for example, flower beetles, when you see those in one of your facilities, it indicates a cleaning issue. So when we do an inspection, we identify the item in the cleaning category, not in the pest control section. CIP, clean in place and clean out of place. We'll talk about that with some pictures, and let's talk about some mold. So again, here's the side of a tank. This is a tank that's already been CIP'd, meaning it's a batch tank that they've already cleaned. They open it up and look at, they never remove the gasket. They never clean the gasket. So now as soon as they close this back up again, they're introducing mold into their product stream. May that contaminate their food product? Absolutely. Okay. Here's a COP tank. This is a clean out of place tank. All of your facilities probably have one where you put parts in, you fill it up with water, you let it soak, introduce chemicals. What you probably don't have, and I want you to, again, I challenge you to check it, make sure that it's on your master cleaning schedule, that you're actually cleaning the COP tank. And oftentimes we don't clean it. We go, it cleans itself. Don't forget all that plumbing that supports it. I did an inspection not too long ago where I opened up all the plumbing that supports it, and it was so poorly welded on the inside that when we took it off, I mean, the smell was overwhelming, just overwhelming, because the gaskets were so, they weren't seated properly and the welding was so poor. So again, make sure that you're doing, that this is on your master cleaning schedule. Another little tip that I want to point out for you, and this is truly an inspection tip. In many of your facilities that I've been into in the past few years, because when you turn on the water source right now, and you can all see it in the picture, it's on that back wall. If I turn it on, what happens? It splashes a lot of water, right? Splashes, splashes, splashes if you're standing next to it. And there's a lot of you have gone and so you try to make it more comfortable for your employees. So what you've done is you've extended the pipe so it doesn't splash. You've truly extended the pipe all the way down into the water level so it doesn't splash all over. But you know what you've done by doing that? You've defeated the backflow. So what you've done is you've broken the air gap. So I've seen it more times than I can truly count that I've seen that adjustment being made. Please don't do that, because what you're doing is, yes, you're making it more comfortable for the employees. They're not getting splashed, but you're creating now definitely a food safety issue for you. Okay, so please be cautious of things like that. When you see squiggly lines like this and you're working in a grain-based industry, whether it's a bakery or a flour mill or a snack food plant, anything that is grain-based, and you see squiggly lines like that, your first thought should be, I have an insect problem. I have a stored product pest problem. Because you may not. It might be simply vibration, moving some flour. It might be vibration. But you know what this is? Again, it's an indicator. It's telling me to inspect. It's telling me to look. It's telling me to make sure that I don't have an insect problem. Now, if you have employees that work, if you're a plant manager of a bakery, for example, every one of your employees should absolutely know when they see squiggly lines like that, that they should be reporting it to somebody, because it truly is an indicator that you have a pest problem. Okay, hugely important. Doesn't do you any good if you, as the plant director, have all the expertise and you know it. You have to make sure you're disseminating that kind of knowledge and these tips to all your workforce. And that leads me to pest activity. So believe it or not, we did see a lot of pest activity in this past year, a lot of pest activity, predominantly rodents and flies. We also saw a lot of bird activity, and we saw a lot of buildings not effectively sealed, which impacted the pest control. So again, I bring up a rodent, and what we see right off the bat, we see the big whiskers. I mean, you see those huge whiskers. Yes, he's got big eyes and big ears, but it's really the whiskers that you should be paying close attention to in this picture. Remember, he has the big eyes, but his eyes don't really see that well. He relies on those long whiskers to make himself so he can travel throughout the facility. No different than if I told you to shut all your lights off and you had to exit the room. How do you do it? You use your hands, right? You put your hands out and you try and reach the wall. That's exactly how this rodent will travel through a facility. Enters the facility through an open door or through a quarter of an inch opening, a gap, maybe a dock seal that's not in place. Maybe it is an open door. Maybe it's just a structural defect and he sneaks in, but then he travels through the facility with those whiskers touching the floor wall junction. And that's why you have rodent control devices along the floor wall junction. So what you want to make sure that you're doing is that you are not storing product directly against the wall. Because if you do that, you're creating another floor wall junction, which will bring that rodent further away from the wall where you don't have rodent control devices. So again, pay close attention to this. This has been a huge issue last year in the food industry. And again, I'm looking up now. So this is, we're looking up and you can notice that this, in this particular picture, their skylight blew off. And you can see there's actually somebody up there now trying to fix that skylight. The unfortunate thing is the skylight was off for almost 10 days in this, and this is a food company, almost 10 days that they had the skylight where they wrote a work order and it was not a priority to get it fixed. This is a huge issue, huge, huge issue. So again, pay attention to things like this. Don't assume that, oh, the skylight blew off, somebody will fix it. Somebody will take care of it. Make sure you're that somebody. Make sure you're taking ownership of any issue that you see in your plant and you're taking that ownership. Okay, because we did see a lot of openings and the buildings not being sealed, and again saw a lot of bird activity, saw a lot of fly activity, and absolutely saw a lot of rodent activity. So you got to keep these facilities tightly sealed, and that's not just the dock doors, that truly is the facility tightly sealed. And this is probably the best line of defense that you can have when it comes to integrated pest management, or IPM, and it is a pest sighting log. Who is more likely going to find the bird in the warehouse, for example? Who's more likely going to see something scurry underneath the pallet? Probably going to be the employees, right? They're going to say, hey, I don't know what it was, but I saw something run under the pallet last night. I don't know what it was. The closer they are to it, the bigger it is. So if they're close to it, they go, it was huge. It was huge. It was like this big. It was huge. But if they're far away, they go, I saw something little run underneath the pallet. So I'm just telling you that when they say to you, I saw something really big, ask them how far away it was, because it's like probably the size of a truck. It felt huge to them if they were close to it. At least that's how it always felt when I saw something in a plant. So again, when they see something like that, you want them to report it. See something, say something. Truly, don't be afraid. Say, hey, if you saw something run under a pallet, you got to tell me. The pest control company, we have a great pest control service, a pest management professional comes in every week. He does a great job for us. But you know what? He can't be here 24/7, but you have employees that are here 24/7. So use them to be the best pest control technician that you have. And how you do that is filling out a pest sighting log. And if you need copies of these, I have plenty willing to share with you. Now let's talk about the non-product zone cleaning. Because again, I don't want you saying, I heard Judy say we only have to pay attention to the product zone. Didn't say that at all. Remember, not saying that. Housekeeping is hugely important. Housekeeping is important for a lot of reasons, because if you have poor housekeeping in a facility, you will most definitely end up impacting your product zone. So you need to pay attention to housekeeping. You need to do a great job with housekeeping. You need to keep product areas clean, but just remember, it doesn't, if you're focusing, for example, on making sure that the area, that your work area is spotless, really clean, but you have condensation dripping into your product, the bigger risk is that condensation dripping into your product, or peeling paint falling into your product. So what I'm saying is pay attention to the product zone, then focus on the product area. Hugely important though, and let's talk about a couple of things. Here's a picture of a facility. It's beautiful facility. It absolutely is a beautiful facility. And what I mean by that is they have good sanitary design. So they have things comfortably lifted up off the floor, very easy for me if I want to go and clean it, right? They're doing everything right, or are they? So let me ask you this. Is it okay when they have a leak like this? Is it okay just to put catch pans underneath it? Identify, control. Have they eliminated the problem? Absolutely not. And will they always have the catch pans underneath it? Absolutely not. And how I know that is look at the condition of the floor. So it's like if you do something at your home, if you bought a new dishwasher and it leaked all over the floor, you wouldn't put a catch pan under it. You would say, fix it. Something's wrong with it, fix it. This is a piece of equipment you should have the same passion about and say, you know what, it's leaking, let's fix it. Let's get maintenance on it. Let's write a work order. Let's get it fixed. The solution isn't to simply put the catch pan. All right. Because all you've done is identified and controlled. And you know what's going to happen in a month? You're going to have another catch pan. And in 3 months, you're going to have another catch pan. And pretty soon you have a facility that's out of control. So this is what I mean by housekeeping. These areas have to be well maintained. This picture is a little hard, so let me help you with it. We are on the left-hand side is actually some scales going into a bag maker. And on the right-hand side is a walking platform. And this bag maker, the line was running so out of control, so fast, and they've had so many problems that the product was now falling onto the floor. All right. Do you think this facility has and this didn't just happen? If it just happened and they shut down, I would say great, that's what you want them to do. It just happened, shut it down, let's clean it up, let's get control. But what if I told you it's been operating like this for half of a day? Do you think they have a commitment to food safety? How does a person in a senior position, how do you as a supervisor, as a manager, as a vice president, how do you go out on the floor and tell everybody, yes, I'm concerned about food safety when you can allow a condition like this to exist? And you can't. And that's why it's so important that housekeeping does have an important role when it comes to your overall food safety program. So remember, it's not just about, hey, we want it to cosmetically look great. We do want it to cosmetically look great, but it's the messaging that we're sending to our employees each and every day that's just as important. Okay. Let's not also forget floor drains. And I will tell you, for last year, we did forget floor drains. And I say that because it shows up as one of our top 10 items on the AIB inspection is we're not doing a good job of cleaning floor drains. And remember, all the filth in one area is going to go into a floor drain if we're doing wet cleaning. So, this is the area that we should be paying attention to. We should have, most of us have drain maps. We should be cleaning them routinely, making sure that we're using dedicated utensils for it. But this is very, very important. And it sounds simple. And you're probably saying, in my plan, I do all that. And I hope that's the case, you're doing all that. But the data is telling us otherwise. So let's use the data and let's use it proactively. So the data is telling us we're not doing a great job of cleaning floor drains. So challenge it in your own facility. Go out and inspect a couple floor drains and see what they really look like. Okay. And then let's not forget the sky lifts and the forklifts and the pallet jacks and the things that we use as, that travel throughout our facility. These absolutely have to be on a master cleaning schedule, and oftentimes they're not. And this is a perfect example of one that, who owns it? Well, it's a rental. That's what I hear. It's a rental. Okay, didn't answer my question. Who owns it? Well, maintenance used it last. No, maintenance didn't use it last. Sanitation used it last. No, it wasn't sanitation. You guys used it because you were fixing this. No, you guys used it. Somebody has to own it. So make sure it's on a master cleaning schedule for regular and routine cleaning. So not regular, like, yeah, we'll do it once every 6 months. Make sure that cleaning is routine, because this piece of equipment is going to travel all over the facility, and it is going to go higher than your product zone. It is going to go above the product. So it's going to be introduced into your product zone. So please make sure you're doing a great job on managing a piece of equipment such as this. And then let's not forget those out of the way areas, those out of the way, maybe in the warehouse behind all the storage racks, you have a wall like this. Let's not forget these areas, because when FDA comes in, they're not going to forget these areas. When AIB comes in, they're not going to forget these areas. And when your largest customer comes in, they're not going to forget these areas. So find those areas in your plant right now that you'd say, because you have these discussions when you have your work group meetings, ask your employees, what's the area right now in our plant that we consider our eyesore? What's the area in our plant right now that we really don't want to show off to our guests? And that's the area that you want to go out and tackle. And every plant has one. Every plant has that door that we want to keep closed. We need to stop keeping those doors closed. We got to get into these areas and make sure that we're maintaining these areas. Okay. So just to summarize, and then we'll open it up for questions. Please remember the may clause. If you forgot everything that I just talked about, don't forget the word may. And remember, explaining the why helps change a culture. Really, if you can take the time and say, why do I have to use food grade lubricant? Why do I have to use it? I use food grade in my other job. I never had to use it. Why do I have to use it? If you can take the time and educate somebody and explain why, then you'll see the light bulb will go on and they'll go, oh, I understand that. That makes sense. That makes sense. and we want things to make sense. If you're not sure about things, use your resources. AIB is a great resource. AFTO is a great resource. So if you're not sure, use your resources. They are available. And then don't forget root cause analysis, and that's identify, control, and eliminate the problem. Thank you all so much. I know it's Friday, so we'll get through questions quickly. I know it, won't we, Stephen?
We will. Well, first, Judy, we want to thank you for your wonderful presentation and tell you, and a few of the participants have been commenting on the photos. The photos were amazing and told the story well. You have definitely done a good job of catching great photos of what's happening in the facilities. We do have a first question for you. And the first question is, can you talk a little bit about some specific pest management issues that happen with the seasons changing? Oh, are you muted?
Sorry, that's a great question. And I can spend all day talking about IPM. It's one of my favorite topics. But the person that raises the question about seasons, this is the change of season. And when a facility gets really, really cold, rodents, for example, want to come in. But let's not forget the opposite. When it gets really, really hot outside, rodents want to come in. So don't the flying insects want to come in. So this is the time when you really, as we change seasons now, because we hopefully are getting out of this, for many of us, a very difficult winter, moving into a beautiful spring. And that also means employees like to keep doors open because the beautiful fresh air comes in. This is when we really need to make sure that we tighten up our fundamental programs, keep the doors closed, make sure we're working closely with our pest management professionals. That's a great question.
Looks like we have a question in the chat box saying sealing and some rusting over an enclosed unit. How big of issue of concern is that really to an auditor, Judy?
Oh, that's another good question. So every time you ask a question like that, I want to answer it with this one word: depends. So it depends. And here's what I mean by that. It depends if you're saying it's a completely closed tank and it never gets opened ever. There's never a reason for it to be open. I would still tell you it's not okay, because I'm going to go up there with a spatula or a scraper and I'm going to scrape it and make sure there's no cockroach activity behind it. I'm going to make sure what's causing it to rust in the first place, probably a moisture issue. So I want to investigate it. So if nothing else, it's an indicator of something wrong. But if that tank is open routinely, now it is a food safety issue. So it's either going to be a big issue or a small issue. And the reason why I say depends, that really truly depends on everything going on around it. But please don't think, oh, it's okay because I don't open the tank. It's not okay. Something is wrong. And as an inspector, whether it's a regulator or again, a third party visitor coming in, they're going to try and find out the source of that moisture problem that you have.
Well, we have another question, Judy. Can you come into our site and just walk around and tell me all, or discuss all the issues you see?
So, we do that at AIB, and I know the person didn't mean me. I know that, but we do that, and that's something that you want to take advantage of. A lot of times, you think of the AIB inspector as just inspector. They come in, they inspect us, they leave a report. They're also educators, and don't lose sight of that. They will come into your facility without ever writing a report, and they'll spend a whole day or 2 days with you, just teaching you, training you, telling you exactly what I just shared with you. They'll also do webinars, just like the partnership we have with AFTO. They can do it with your facility. So please, take advantage of all of these. These are resources that are available to you.
Absolutely. Just one more question, and once again, if you do have a question, please enter it in the Q&A box. Is talk to us a little bit about what we can do with our workforces and improving our food safety culture.
So food safety culture is one of those, everybody has a hard time explaining it. Everybody knows they want a good, solid food safety culture, but when you ask 10 people what's food safety culture, you're going to get 11 different answers, really. Everybody has a different opinion of food safety culture. To me, food safety culture is doing it right every single day. I mean, that to me is food safety culture. And I think, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, nobody, I've yet to meet that employee that comes to work in the morning saying, I think I'll do a really lousy job today. I think today I'm going to do something something really bad. I've yet to meet that employee. We might have that employee that is less than maybe not our best employee or our favorite employee, but you take that employee outside of that environment and you know what they're telling all their friends? How great it is to work for the company. I mean, they'll complain to you, but they're out there at that barbecue and they're like, I work for AIB, by golly, it's the greatest company. We're all proud of where we work. I mean, let's be honest, we really are all proud of where we work. Otherwise, we wouldn't stay. So I think it's our responsibility to educate people on why they're doing what they're doing. Because, again, the more you teach, train, and educate, the better off your workforce will be. And I think they'll be more bought into the culture of food safety.
Absolutely. So we have one more question. The
Mhm.
squiggly lines you said indicated the presence of a pest. What should the solution be? What if it's coming through the raw materials? How do you handle that, Judy?
Oh, another. These are great questions. So I can tell these are food safety professionals asking the question. So again, a squiggly line is an indicator. So it can also be vibration. So let's say, for example, you have a conveyor belt that's vibrating and there's some flour on it. You might see a squiggly line just because it's vibrating. But let's say we do know it's stored product insects, and how you'll know if it's coming from your supply chain is you have this thing called a sifter, right? So your bulk material goes in through a sifter, and that sifter will the flour will go through a screen or a series of screens, depending on whatever type of sifter you have, and it'll go into this little bucket that we call tailings or tailovers. And if you're seeing insects in those tailovers, the chances are you have a problem in your silo. Always assume it's yours. You have a problem in your silo, or you have a problem with your supplier. If you've already ruled out and you say, absolutely, I know it's not us, we just cleaned our silos, it's not us, we know it's the supplier, because we're talking to the industry and they're having the problem with the supplier. Guys, you need to go back to your supplier and hold your supplier accountable. And you should be doing inspections on your supplier, or you should be having AIB or another third party do inspections on those suppliers. But you cannot bring in a contaminated raw material and hope that you're going to make it better. You just can't.
Oh, that's well, once again, Judy, we do want to thank you today, and we want to remind all of our participants this is part of a series of 4 webinars. Our next webinar will be Friday, March 19th at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on food distribution and food safety and food distribution. The webinar after that will be Friday, April 2nd at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on food safety for beverages. And finally, the last webinar of the series will be Monday, April 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern, and that will be on food safety for packaging. Very exciting series of webinars. Judy is an amazing presenter for a Friday afternoon, and we have one more question. How frequently should silos for flour in a bakery be cleaned?
Again, that's one of those depends. So let me give you just some things to think about. So the life cycle of a stored product insect, okay, a life cycle, is about 30 days, actually 28 days. So ideally, you want to interrupt that life cycle, which means you would be doing it, say, every 3 weeks. Right? That's your life cycle. But it depends if the silo is inside, it depends on the size, it depends if the silo's outside, what's the moisture. I mean, there's a lot of variables to consider. But if you're truly having a stored product insect issue, then you want to make sure you're always breaking that life cycle. And how you do that is with cleaning every 3 weeks, every 21 days. Because if you do that, you're constantly breaking the life cycle of that stored product pest. To the person that asked that question, if you send me an email or you want to just call me, I will help you specifically with your plan, because that's an issue that I can certainly help and support you with. So don't hesitate. Reach me here at AIB, and I will help you with that specifically at your facility, and we can walk through it.
Well, Judy, that was wonderful and great answers to those questions. Thank you to all of the participants for joining us today, and once again, thank you to our friends at AIB for be partnering with us on this webinar series. Don't forget, you'll be getting an email after this series with the registration for the next 3. Please join us for those webinars. And once again, thank you, Judy, Mark, and the AIB team, and Amy, who's managing our webinar today. Everyone, have a wonderful weekend.